Hello everyone. In this episode of Big Ideas, we speak with Vimal Balasubramaniam, who is a senior lecturer at the School of Economics and Finance at Queen Mary University, London. Today, Vimal will discuss the implications of climate change on household finance. Hi Vimal, thank you for joining us today. Curious to hear your thoughts.
So, one of the greatest challenges that we as a country in India are going to be facing going forward are the implications of climate change on households' welfare, and there's very little thought, both in terms of measurement of how large this problem is, and on implications in terms of how households are going to transition from where we stand today to accommodate the inevitability of whatever is going to come with climate change in India. So, just to give you a simple example, the average household holds most of their assets in real estate. Now, it is not a bad assumption to make that most of this real estate is precisely where they are living. And given a climate shock with extreme heat or floods or any kind of climate related concerns, drought, and so on, there comes a point where households may have to make a decision about having to migrate and move. Now, at scale, there are going to be hundreds of millions of households that are going to move. There's enough work to show that this is going to happen. But what this also means is most of the assets held by these households are going to be downward valued massively, and they're going to lose a lot of wealth that they hold in their balance sheet. Now, this has two important problems. The first is households are unlikely to want to move away from where they are because it's a sunk cost, right? They have a house, they need to live there. Households, however, can't afford to not be there. So it might be the case that the nature of migration, therefore, will be very different. So you're going to have, say, working individuals, adults, moving away from that region in search of work in other parts where, of course, firms are also optimizing for climate change. They're going to move to places where it's easier to, it lowers their cost to produce because of climate or weather considerations. And if that happens, then we have other kind of issues to think about, right? What does this mean for household welfare? What does this mean for fertility issues of whether these people will consider having kids going forward, what the consideration there would look like, and so on. So this is a big idea that's been bothering me because there's so little we understand about households in India when it comes to climate change.
So, if you see the migration patterns now, it's mostly from rural to urban areas. But climate change has been affecting major cities as well. For instance, Chennai gets flooded almost every year. Mumbai is built on repeatedly reclaimed land. Also, that real estate prices are increasing in major cities because that's where firms set up shops. Given this context, how do you envision bringing about this change in people's approach or mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. So there are two problems associated here. One is, you're right, we have a long understanding. I mean, we understand migration in India very well because we have seasonal migration that happens to urban centers. We have rural to urban migration that's happened a great deal. But there's one important change that's happened over the years, which is more than half of India is urban today. So the nature of migration that I don't know if there's enough hard numbers to back this, but the nature of migration, I presume, is no longer people flocking into just Mumbai, just Madras, just Delhi, just Calcutta, or Bangalore, but also moving to tier two cities from villages. So the on real estate prices, it's again an important question. If climate change is a big thing, do prices reflect this risk? Again, I mean, these are all important questions to ask, and this is a big idea that's been nagging me because we don't know answers to this. So in Bombay itself, you're right. I mean, the how does how do prices just in the mainland versus just in the island differ? Um, where you know that certain parts are reclaimed and certain parts are not. I'm assuming the price direction is going to be the opposite, which is there's a reason why people want to reclaim because that's where people want to buy a home and so on and so forth. And that's problematic. So if markets don't price the risk, then there's something wrong, and that might just be the collective um, um, unwillingness to take climate seriously. Um, and then that's going to only magnify the problem rather than reduce it because the prices don't reflect it. People don't seem to be caring about it right now. State doesn't seem to care about it either. And come the shock, there's going to be a massive blow to people's wealth, and they don't even realize that it's around the corner.
What do you think is the role of public finance here? Especially because when it comes to land, there is a sentimental value attached to it, and people still see it as a default investment option. So, how do we see this changing, and what are your thoughts on that?
Again, great question. On public finance, my biggest fear is whenever there's a systematic shock, you can't expect insurance markets to play a role to sort of buffer you. The only recourse is going to be state support to transition. Now, state support will be the largest if we don't prepare for the chaos that we're going to face. So it's in the state's incentive to think about it and get this right beforehand, but I'm not sure they're doing it. Do we know what the ballpark numbers in terms of percentage of GDP that the fiscal implications of migration alone? There are so many other problems, but migration alone is going to cause households are going to be they're also voters. So if their house price value crashes, their ability to move also becomes harder. Then populist sort of policy making of the order where government foolishly says, right, we will try and build massive public housing to move these people away is problematic because there are enough poor people who don't have housing that they should be focusing on to begin with. But populism of the order where middle class households in India and upper middle class households in India are pretty much going to be subsidized because they said, "Oh, I didn't know this was going to be a problem," is likely to happen. So the fiscal implications are massive. There are very little incentives for political parties or the state to hold back on that kind of support. And we are only about now getting into some semblance of fiscal discipline at the federal level, but I'm not sure that's going to last very long at this rate. So it's not gloom and doom. I'm hoping the reason why we need to think about this now is so that we can preempt a lot of these challenges and think about novel ways to address them.
My final question to you is that we as a country are always on mission mode, right? So when a catastrophe hits, then we think about what to do, and then it's crisis management at that point. But if this is something that we can foresee based on your work, what are some actionable policy pathways that you have been thinking about?
So the first policy pathway that we need to consider and address is, there are very small but very powerful things we can think about. So there's this entire framework of competitive federalism that seems to be a very popular approach to getting states to compete for firms to come set up shop and so on. When it comes to things like climate change, what you need is cooperative federalism, not competitive one. So what do I mean by that? Let's say Tamil Nadu is going to suddenly see a massive rise in temperature, and that's true. And Tamil Nadu is one of those highly industrialized states where there is an elaborate subsidy framework and mechanism put in place to get firms to invest in the state. Now that's problematic because Tamil Nadu can potentially continue to do that, distorting firms' incentives from moving away from areas where they should actually not be investing to begin with. So the contingent risk on just the economic activity again falls on the state with these kind of policies. So cooperative federalism here is literally understanding how the central government can get states to cooperate on where economic activity is going to be located and how that's going to shape things. Because a large tract of land in Tamil Nadu or large swaths of Assam because of floods are going to be really challenging to be areas to locate a big factory or produce things. But if you're going to have a large contingent of people in Assam moving, we need states to cooperate. We need the central government to facilitate that. And there's an entire political economy consideration that I'm not touching upon, but small policy changes of cooperation and competition. Policy changes that look at India as a whole, as opposed to these parts competing with each other, will be. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.